Start streaming. Okay, I think we're good. All right, happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Crypto with Chris. Today we have our old friend of the show, James, back on to talk about his journey with TradingView over the past several weeks, and then also some thoughts on MicroStrategy charts and things like that. But before we get into that, I wanted to first remind everybody to follow my Twitch channel so that you get alerts on new shows and also so that you can comment in the chat. You do need to be a follower in order to comment. And then lastly, follow my Telegram channel for alerts on all upcoming shows. The links to that are in my Twitch profile and in the description of all my videos. Any one of these places will get you the links to all my stuff. So, all right, with that, let's get started. James, welcome back. Good to have you.
Yes, it's good to be back. I think hopefully both of us have gotten over the trauma of what happened last time I was on. Hence why it's been a while. But yeah, that was the bad luck show. Everything that could have gone wrong, we had to like start three or four times. But anyway, that's all behind us now. Back to like being brilliant as usual.
Good. Yes. Although I just got, okay, wait, I think maybe the echo's gone. Let's see, is the echo gone? It was just, oh, wait. Okay, it's gone. I think we're
tell
good.
me a freaking jinx.
No, we're good. I think we're good. I think we're good. Okay, it was, I figured out what it was right away too. So I think we're solid here. Okay. All right, yes, anyway, trauma averted. All right, let's do this. Okay. MicroStrategy. What do we got?
You want to dive into MicroStrategy first?
I'm sorry. Let's see. No, tell me what you got here. This is the liquidity. Well, let me back up. Tell me how your journey has been now using TradingView since these earlier shows. What have you been doing with it? What have you learned? What things are working for you? How have you kind of evolved since we last spoke?
Yeah, so there's over the past few weeks, I've honestly not done much because I've been on holiday. I was in Belgium and then France, and I've literally just come back. I come back to have two nasty surprises waiting for me. I have a letter calling me in for jury duty at really not a good time for me, so I think I'm going to get out of it actually. And the second is Bitcoin is down to 26,000. It's like it's just gone, and I'm like, what the hell? So yeah, but in terms of using TradingView, honestly, what you've been teaching has been like really, really useful, and you'll really see it when we kind of dive into the MicroStrategy chart, where I really sort of was able to apply what you've been teaching me and how to use TradingView and stuff, and to make me look at something and go, okay, why is that? And to be able to use TradingView to help me understand something and to be in a place where like, okay, I actually think that I've got a pretty good grasp on this now, because I can now see it a lot more clearly because of being able to use TradingView. So what you've been doing has been working. Let's keep on doing it. But yeah, so actually one thing that sort of cropped up during the time that I was away was this liquidity chart here. This is like kind of our favorite one, the one that both of us use. I think it's the one that we got from Major Duffels. But for a few days, it stopped working. Right. So it was just like, error message was coming up in the center here. I was straight away on the Discord going like, Major Duffels, your thing is no longer working now. Like, fix it, please. And actually, one thing to go through is one thing that I did was you have a lot of elements making up this equation, which is making up this chart essentially. Right. And when you put your cursor onto different elements of it, it tells you where that element is coming from, what the source of information is. So I've just come here. I come here. It tells me what the source is for this. I come here. It tells me what the source is for this. So I went through the whole equation. And basically was trying to like find the problem essentially. And the problem was here with the Chinese central bank balance sheet. And it's come up now where the source for this is. But when the chart wasn't working, this wasn't coming up. It was just saying invalid symbol or whatever.
Right. I remember when that happened.
Yeah. So when it wasn't working, for whatever reason, this source was just on the fritz. And so if it carried on, if like it never came back, then we would, me or you or Major Duffels or whoever would basically have to like try and find an alternative way of getting the total assets of the Chinese central bank to then put into this equation. But it came back after a few days. So I think that one of the lesson there was basically don't panic,
Right.
because you saw me on the Discord. I was like, Major Duffels, it's not working. Please make it work,
No,
because
I
it's
know.
like it's one of the go-tos. It's that important.
Sure, sure. I wondered what happened when that did happen because I'm like, what did that, was it just like an API, like a programming issue, or did something happen in China that shut off that feed, or what was going on, or and then of course it's funny because it was China. It's like, well, who knows why that data feed shut off,
Because of China and because of what China's doing at the
Right,
moment. Like if you follow Blockworks macro YouTube and stuff, and especially Western Nakamura's videos on
right,
China and what's going on there, they're doing stuff at the moment. So like that, that's not beyond the realms of possibility, or it could just be like a technical Fritz API issue, like you said. But I think that if it happens again now I won't be like I'll be, much more calm about it, because it's basically for your go-to charts, it's worth having like a couple of backups. So if it
right,
doesn't work again, just come to your backup. Again, this is the one that we used before, which is not as good because it doesn't let you see it on the weekly, but this was still working. So
right,
if
right,
if something's on the fritz, no panic. Come over here, come to your backup, and just use that for a bit and see what happens. If it's then broken on like a kind of a longer term, this time it was just a few days. But if it's like not coming back and not coming back, then it's time to like maybe look at the drawing board or the equation board or whatever and see what you can do instead. Um, and Jaron, as well as having a couple of charts, I also have a couple here as indicators. So, I've got 4 different liquidity charts. One of them must be working at any one time.
right. I've really come to favor that global net liquidity. I
Yeah.
think because it factors in a couple other things too, like reverse repo and now I'm drawing a blank on what the other thing was.
TGA.
TGA, yeah,
Yeah.
TGA. So yeah, that has
Oh
become my
yeah.
go-to, and I like to because it's sort of easier to overlay that one in various charts, which we can get into later. But
Yeah.
that one has worked its way up to the top of the list, also because it seems to work on, well, you can actually display it even on a daily time frame or even down to intraday time frames, even though it doesn't necessarily update at that frequency, it'll still display on those chart intervals, which I really like too. So
Yeah.
that one has, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. This
so
one is basically here in case this one is not working, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so,
right, right. So okay, so I see you've got a favorites list here for your indicators.
yes, this is honestly so. I am still on the free version of TradingView. I'm still like looking up all the different things that I can do on just the free version.
Right,
One of the limitations of the free version is I can only have 3 indicators at any one time. So when you're on a chart and I'm watching you doing things, and you've got like loads of indicators all here, and you can basically just like switch certain ones
right,
on, switch certain ones off. Like you've got it all there. It's very, very easy. I can only have 3. So if and I only have 3 indicators and 1 chart layout. So if I go to a different chart, I'm on a monthly time frame here. I'm still on the monthly time frame.
right,
Any indicators that I had here, they would be the same ones showing, whereas you have different charts all across the top here in different tabs and stuff. So you might have Bitcoin on the monthly here, but then you could come over here and have ETH on the daily with different indicators that are more
right,
relevant. I have to do all of that manually, so I basically have to like get rid of the indicators and add in the indicators that I want for whatever chart that I'm looking at the time. And honestly, having the favorites here is a lifesaver, because all the stuff that I use is basically kind of like all in one place.
right.
So yeah, yes, it does still suck a bit that I can only use 3 indicators at any one time, but it's actually not as difficult as I otherwise thought, because you can switch pretty quickly back and forth.
Right. I feel like I can see you sort of going through the same path that I went through as my trading view journey unfolded. Um,
The master and the apprentice.
I mean, I was doing because like I said, I used the free version of TradingView for like upwards of 2 years, I think, before I even started paying anything for it. So I was, trying to get all kinds of clever to make it work and make it smooth. Yeah, I hear you. Do you have more than one watch list? Have you done that yet?
No, I haven't, and that's probably
Okay.
because I've not been as active over the past few weeks, because I've been busy in France, busy in Belgium,
Right.
doing the stuff that I should be doing in France and Belgium, not like being on TradingView. So, but that will
Right.
probably change. I can probably see me doing a few different watch lists. So, like, having the stocks here under one watch list, having the liquidity and other different useful metrics and things on like another watch list. Yeah, I can see myself doing that. So that'll probably be for next time.
Right. That's kind of how I have mine sort of broken out like that. Well, it's funny, I have stocks and more sort of, I lumped all like stocks and other macro and conventional sort of asset classes all into one group, which I feel like now at this point I need to break it out a little bit more because I've gotten a little
Mhm.
more into the weeds with all that stuff. But separately from that, I have like 3 or 4 different crypto watch lists. One broken out in like USD denominated pairs, one broken out in Bitcoin denominated pairs, and one broken out in ETH denominated pairs. Um, and that has proven to be useful for me. So. Um,
That's like very pro. I'm very far off of that.
Honestly, for me though, what I'm running into is the watch lists are cool and all, but really the sucky thing about the watch list is they all like I don't toggle between different uh, things on my watch list within the same chart layout. Like I make a separate chart layout for every single pair pretty much that I watch. And so having the watch list doesn't really help me in terms of being able to quickly toggle through different things. I need like a separate watch list of my chart layouts almost so that I can just scroll through my chart layouts and do that. But there doesn't seem to be anything like that I've found yet. So that's the limitation I'm running up against. And I don't know if it just doesn't exist or I mean I don't know. But yeah, anyway.
Hence why you basically have a gazillion tabs all across here, and you're basically doing things that way.
No, I know exactly. And it's cumbersome because I don't have any way to like organize the tabs. I try to sort of shuffle them around and put them in certain orders, but it's still so hard and I need a simpler way to clearly navigate what's what and section that stuff out, and I just don't have that. Speaking of sectioning out, I don't know if you know, but within a watch list you can actually add section breaks and things like that too, um,
Ooh.
if you wanted to. Just I think you just right click on it maybe like within the list itself.
So add section.
Yeah, add section, so you can add a section break and then call it, these are my stocks
Stocks.
or
Yeah.
blah blah blah, so you can do that. That's the cool feature I stumbled on a while back too that I could use but don't.
Okay.
But
No, that's cool. Like, because I can literally have a watch list for my stocks, and
right.
then I can maybe section it out into like, these are the ones in my LISA, these are the ones in my general account, blah 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 blah. So actually, yeah, that'll be, yeah, handy little tool. Thank you.
And then another thing I do is if you click the watch list button again too, up at the top, you can apply the little like the flags. You can add like a red list or a blue list or
Yep.
a green list. And so
Mm.
I'll use that feature to flag pairs that pairs that I'm actually holding or trading or something like that. So that way it just kind of gives it another identifier. Oh, this is something that I'm actually more directly involved in or have a stake in. Versus just something I'm kind of
Something that
watching.
you're watching. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The watch list of the watch list.
right, exactly. So you can apply different symbols and different sections and things like that to kind of further break that down, which I think is really handy. Um, so that's cool. Nice. Um, So let's see, what else do you got? You got the, I see you got a couple tabs here. You have the MicroStrategy
Oh
tab.
yeah, that was that. Yeah, that was the one that I came. Yeah, I can just get rid of that one.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
I see.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, while we're talking about MicroStrategy, let's kind of go into it. So, the last time I was on, I was basically like when I was waiting, my plane was delayed for over 3 hours, which means I get compensation. But during that whole time on the way to Ghent, there was like a big debate on MicroStrategy going on at the time, and
Mhm.
like, what is it? Basically, I'd pose the question of if a Bitcoin ETF happens, what will the impact on MicroStrategy be? And there ended up being like a way big debate about it. And then literally hours later, someone asked, someone just looked at the conversation and straight away asked, what has MicroStrategy actually done? Like, look at the actual history. And so
Right.
I don't know about anyone else, but I was feeling foolish going like, oh yeah, that's so obvious. So we looked at that a little bit, and then the question was becoming, is MicroStrategy Bitcoin on leverage? Like, what's going on here? So I decided to basically look into it in a bit more detail and see what is going on. And honestly, it was like what I found was pretty interesting. Now you
Hmm.
can see a lot of lines here. These lines and stuff were like really, really helpful. They were what you kind of taught me on the last time I was on with you. So I'm literally putting what you're teaching me into practice, and it was ended up being like really useful, really interesting, and really did help a lot. So just put it up on the daily, and we're going to. Let me zoom out. There we go. So what I did was I basically this blue line here is essentially day one of MicroStrategy buying a bunch of Bitcoin and essentially turning into a proxy Bitcoin,
Right.
basically. Before that, it was just a tech business stock, essentially.
Right.
So after day one here is basically when MicroStrategy's sort of Bitcoin era, so to speak. And I added a line here on that level as basically this is MicroStrategy's break even as after this date and before this date, basically. So basically, since this was where MicroStrategy was when it first started buying Bitcoin. And what you can see is that MicroStrategy has had a lot of price action around this line. Most of the time it's been above, but there are times where it's been below. Um, but like
I
basically what I've done is I've put the lines here. Yeah, this is a bit of it was a bit painstaking, but it was worth it to go through it. Each line is basically the day when MicroStrategy bought a bunch of Bitcoin. I put how many Bitcoin they bought as a label down below in the bottom here. And I kind of that there are a lot of them. There are also a lot of times when they bought Bitcoin less than 1,000 Bitcoin and it basically did nothing. So I just ignored those. I basically only put down times when they bought more than 1,000 Bitcoin, essentially, because those are ones that are like really matter that are going to sort of
right.
move the market, essentially. So what you can see here is that on day one they bought 21,500 Bitcoin. Here they bought 16,500 Bitcoin, and so on. Um,
I think
it's
we should clarify real quick that this
yeah.
pair we're looking at is MicroStrategy versus Bitcoin. So this is
Yes,
like,
MicroStrategy priced in Bitcoin, not
right.
priced in dollars. Sorry, yeah, but very, very important.
So these are,
Other-
it's going up and
yeah,
down in value against Bitcoin, basically.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is sort of the break even
Right.
in priced in Bitcoin, not priced in dollars and stuff, because obviously that would be just completely different.
Right.
Um, so basically, what you can see here is that day one it bought 21,000 Bitcoin, and the stock shoots up when priced in Bitcoin compared to Bitcoin. So whatever Bitcoin is doing, MicroStrategy is rising up way more in price compared to Bitcoin.
Right.
Um, and there was another sort of leg up when they bought another one. So when you really zoom in, this is on like the daily candles, but when you really zoom in, you can really see like on these big sort of announcements it goes pew. And so that is really kind of like useful information. Then it kind of like it goes around here because during this time, this is 2021. So this is when Bitcoin is having like its big moments and bull runs. So here is kind of like Bitcoin, when Bitcoin. So here's the thing. I kind of figured out that whole question of what is MicroStrategy, is it acting like Bitcoin on leverage? Sometimes it acts like Bitcoin on leverage. Basically, when you're in the bear market and things are going down, MicroStrategy acts like Bitcoin on leverage on the downside. So
Right.
Bitcoin is going down in price, MicroStrategy goes down further because MicroStrategy has levered to buy Bitcoin. It's borrowed money to buy Bitcoin. So it is a bigger risk, and therefore when things are bad and things are going down, it makes sense that MicroStrategy acts like Bitcoin on leverage. When
It's
things
like a
are
higher
sideways,
beta Bitcoin.
yes, essentially, yeah. When things are going, when Bitcoin is like kind of in an uptrend, sometimes MicroStrategy acts like Bitcoin on leverage. So Bitcoin is going up, MicroStrategy is going up more. And that's because when MicroStrategy buys like a big amount of Bitcoin, like here, 30,000 or so, it didn't go up at first because this is when Bitcoin was really racing ahead. Bitcoin was having like its big
Right.
sort of
Right.
moment and stuff. So MicroStrategy was going up a lot in dollar terms, but it was struggling to keep up with Bitcoin because
Right.
Bitcoin was just racing ahead so much. But as soon as Bitcoin kind of started slowing down, then MicroStrategy was then starting to race ahead. That whole announcement of 30,000 Bitcoin being bought here, that news was really then starting to come into play. So that's when MicroStrategy is really acting like Bitcoin on leverage. In a sideways market, it's not, it doesn't, when Bitcoin is like, just staying calm and in a sideways market, MicroStrategy does not act like leverage Bitcoin, but its price action can change. So we're in kind of like a sideways market at the moment. Yes, it's just dumped a bit, but we're basically in a sideways market for the past few months. And yet you see here, it's gone up again. So what's happened? Well, they announced that they bought 12, just over 12,000 more Bitcoin. And so therefore, the stock price of MicroStrategy has to catch up and now have the value of 12,000 more Bitcoin taken into account. So this is where things like the net asset value comes into play. So,
Right.
and actually the net asset value of MicroStrategy follows pretty close to what to how much Bitcoin they have essentially. Yes, it has periods of being above and below, and that's kind of very similar to this chart. But overall, it's kind of like stays pretty true to the net asset value. So that's kind of like the big overview of what MicroStrategy is doing. And I think understanding that, I'm kind of more because again, I have some MicroStrategy in my lifetime ISA because I can't buy Bitcoin directly. And so, yes, the Bitcoin ETF in America would take some of the market essentially for MicroStrategy, but it won't take all of it. And actually, the price action is basically based on how much Bitcoin, when are they buying it. So I do see the market sort of changing in the short term when I'm saying when a
Right.
Bitcoin ETF is approved. But in the long term, I can kind of see this just kind of carrying on. So that's kind of like the main thing. One other thing to note is that since this date, there has been an announcement that they're going to do, they're going to issue more stock so that they can buy Bitcoin. So I haven't added that onto the chart yet because,
Okay.
I've been on holiday. So I'm going to add that soon. So it'll be interesting to see, it'll be interesting to see if it lines up with this essentially. This going back down here. The other thing to note is there's only one occasion where MicroStrategy has sold Bitcoin for whatever reason, and that was here, this red line, minus 701. So whatever that was about, whether they overextended themselves a little bit, whatever, they sold it here. Did not like that. Look
What
at
was
this.
the actual date of that they did that? Like if you mouse over
Uh,
it.
21st of December 22.
Interesting. Because that was like really, that's funny. I mean, that was almost like a capitulation of some sort, like you said, because that was basically the right around the end of the 4-year cycle. And,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, 2 weeks later, everything went up and has been going up ever since, basically.
Yeah. The other thing to note is that around this sort of time, there was a bunch of buys but they were all less than 1,000. They were all in the hundreds or so. So overall, the selling 701 Bitcoin, I think that it is to do with what was happening at the time,
Right.
where MicroStrategy is kind of like at a business and they're like, oh crap, we need to sell some to actually have some money for just a little bit.
Right.
But basically, like, yeah, that being the one and only time and the first time that they've sold Bitcoin, that was like big news, because apart from that, it's just been accumulation all the way. So it puked right down when compared to Bitcoin. So yeah, and obviously here, this is right during sort of the doldrums of last year.
Sure.
So this is where I'm saying that, like, when Bitcoin was going down, MicroStrategy was just puking down even faster, because that's the times when it is acting like Bitcoin on leverage, and yet it sort of came back and started just trading around this kind of break even from day one all the way back here again. So that was very, very interesting.
It's interesting too, because that 701, that's, I mean, compared to all of the stuff they bought, that's really almost a drop in the bucket. I mean, it's a pretty
Yeah,
insignificant amount.
that was a news story more than
Right.
anything, but it was not as in it's a significant thing, but like it was news more than anything.
Right.
I'd say.
It's funny. I look at this and I would want to I would want to overlay like a Bitcoin USD chart on top of it, and then a MicroStrategy USD chart next to it, like all the stuff so that I could. I've been just like going overlay crazy lately in mine, and wanting to pack as much stuff as I can into one single chart.
Yeah, I think that's something that I did. uh this was like 3-4 weeks ago now at this point, but I think that's what we were doing. We were like going, okay, what is going on between MicroStrategy and Bitcoin, and we were overlaying one on top of the other.
Right.
And that's when we were kind of getting the question, it looks like MicroStrategy is like Bitcoin on leverage, because you could see MicroStrategy like racing ahead, and other times when it's like racing ahead on the downside, and that's when we were asking those sorts of questions, but it wasn't quite right. That's when I turned to pricing MicroStrategy in Bitcoin,
Right.
and just comparing the two directly, and then like adding all of these events in to see what is it that drives MicroStrategy's price.
I mean, certainly, it's interesting that had you just bought MicroStrategy, you'd be technically a little bit up on Bitcoin, going
Yep.
back. Um, even just buying it from the beginning of the year, you'd be up a good bit. Um,
Yeah. But kind of like what's interesting is that, like, if we're now in the next bull run, and we're kind of like in that sort of repeat of what's happened before, where like the bull run is happening and MicroStrategy is chopping around, yeah, a lot, but it's chopping around on the upside. You potentially have like the bare bones of a sort of what'll be interesting is, like, is there a trading strategy here? Like, a lot of time it's in this kind of channel here,
right.
maybe adding some alerts here, as in like these are really good accumulation zones for MicroStrategy, adding some alerts at sort of these sorts of levels. So like this is really kind of when you want to get out of MicroStrategy and go back to just Bitcoin. And what would be very nice is if there was a blockchain version of MicroStrategy where you could directly trade between the two, and then it becomes like an arbitrage play between the two.
Right.
But that'll be wishful thinking for now.
That's super cool. I wonder if there is.
Mm.
It it's funny. I haven't paid nearly enough attention to this, and so I'm finding this very interesting. I didn't really realize that to a degree, depending on when you buy or sell, you could actually have done better
Yeah.
um, with just MicroStrategy stock.
That's the thing. I've not cared about MicroStrategy at all. I don't listen to Sailor anymore, because I'm just like, yeah, whatever, over the whole thing. And I own some, so I need to understand it, because I own some, because it's basically my proxy for Bitcoin. But now, having overlaid this, like, it's not really a proxy for Bitcoin. It behaves in a bit of a different way, but however, it's still. I think, yeah, like I said, now that I understand it better, I feel better about holding it and things, and I feel better about adding in the future. Because yeah, there's maybe the bigger risk on the downside or whatever, but actually I'm kind of like, I'm actually kind of comfortable holding it, which is a bit surprising for me because I'm just like,
Right.
over the wholesaler thing. One other interesting thing to note is there is that kind of very Bitcoin maxi point of view where like fiat currency is dead and everything should be priced in the pure asset of Bitcoin or whatever. And I think while there wasn't that sort of point of view on the Discord, I think someone did say pricing things in Bitcoin should be kind of like the new standard moving forward. And when you really zoom out and you see like how MicroStrategy has performed compared to Bitcoin during all of this time, MicroStrategy started way off down here and has just been puking down versus Bitcoin ever since. And obviously there was that whole thing
Right.
here. And I think that's as far back as this goes. But essentially, this price here is going to be even worse. This picture would be even worse. So essentially,
Sure.
MicroStrategy has been losing to Bitcoin all the way. And yet since then, when you zoom in on here, it's looked kind of very volatile around Bitcoin. But actually on the broader picture, it's kind of been like, okay, actually that's seemed a lot more stable when you're pricing it in Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Obviously, pricing it in dollars, it looks very, very different. But actually, that whole point of view of pricing things in Bitcoin and there being a new standard, zooming out on here, it's like, yeah, actually, kind of fair point.
Yeah, it certainly seems much more in parity, and it seems like it's getting less and less volatile over time. And it's um, I want,
I think,
yeah,
well, this is kind of like after MicroStrategy has um so yeah, after MicroStrategy has bought Bitcoin, this is like kind of the first real bear market and sort of long sideways market that it's had. Other than that, like we haven't done a full 4 year cycle
right.
since this date yet. So we're still going to be learning as we're going through in terms of how this goes.
So, what's your take on what'll happen if when all these ETFs launch to MicroStrategy?
Uh, I so I think, as I said before, I think that there'll be a short-term change, but I don't actually see it changing much moving forward because ultimately there are Bitcoin ETFs and ETCs elsewhere in the world.
Right, right,
They're still not open to absolutely everyone. So like in a general account, I can buy a Bitcoin ETF, ETC, whichever one it is, but I can't in my ISA,
okay,
which is like that tax saving
right,
account where basically you put money in, whatever you do in that is tax free. So that's kind of like where I really want to be playing about with this stuff, but I can't. So I look for proxies instead. That's why I have Coinbase. That's why I have, Marathon. That's why I have MicroStrategy. Um, so yeah, the short term change, yeah. Longer term, I don't honestly see it changing much, and especially knowing that the stock price of MicroStrategy kind of very much follows the net asset value of Bitcoin, but the price action around it, I now understand better.
right, right. That is interesting. I'm gonna keep an eye on that. In fact, I'm gonna when we're done here, I'm gonna throw up a chart on mine and start adding adding all kinds of stuff. Like I said,
What
um,
done? Like MicroStrategy is really something to not care about at all, and yet here we are. We're like, oh my god, that's very interesting.
well,
Oh,
it's like I don't know that I would actually buy it. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I'm not. I guess I'm not saying I would either. But I definitely would pay more attention to it. I think it's just kind of a curious case, and it's interesting to me now, and
yeah,
it's just kind of something that I would glance at from time to time and go, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
um,
I suppose the only other thing to say before moving on is that like we've seen some big purchases here. So like in the 25,000, 30,000, 16,000. Then we've kind of like through this whole period since here, 13,000 here, all of these buys and that one sell here have been like lower. So you've had, 9,000, 7,000, 1,500, 1,500, 4,000. 2,000. They've kind of like been very, very low. And and also the frequency of the big buys has like really dropped off.
Right,
But
right,
then we come to sort of this point and we see that 6,000 buy, another 1,000 here, 12,000 here. So the buys are getting more frequent and they're getting bigger.
right.
And the one that I haven't added in yet is that announcement for the issuing new stock to buy 20, I think it's 25,000 Bitcoin. So that's
Oh,
going to
wow.
be another big purchase. So the buy lines are getting more frequent, they're getting bigger. So there's potential for it to like be in another sort of MicroStrategy bull run, essentially. And there was some kind of like, again, when that was announced, there were some thoughts around the stock split because it's essentially the stock is getting diluted. However, it's being used to buy Bitcoin. So, like, say there's $1 billion worth of stock issued, and yeah, there'll be some admin in that and all that kind of stuff. And, but say like $1 billion of stock is issued to buy $900 million of Bitcoin. That's kind of a bit of a break even or whatever.
Right.
But then we think that the price of Bitcoin is going to go up over time. So that extra Bitcoin that MicroStrategy has is going to end up benefiting all stocks, not just that the $1 billion worth of stock issued. So actually, I kind of don't mind the fact that my shares are getting diluted because it's not getting diluted in dollar terms. It's getting diluted in Bitcoin terms. And the more Bitcoin just kills everything, essentially.
Right, right. Where did you
Again, different
find,
way of thinking is.
where did you look up these buys from? Is it like public? I mean, is it on their website or how did you find that?
Yeah, there's a website that was tracking it. I can't
Oh,
remember
okay.
off the top of my head. I can send it to you. I can maybe put it in the comments or whatever. But yes, some of these are some of them we know for definite the date. Some of these are a bit more around that sort of date.
Okay.
But it overall, when you look at it on the chart and you put it up, it kind of doesn't really matter that much the specific timing of it. Yeah, but mostly broadly fits.
Interesting. Very cool. Um, what can you flip it to the weekly time frame real quick? I just kind of want to see what that looks like.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, it looks even less volatile around
Right. Right. Right.
the.
Interesting. Okay. I like it. I like it. That's good stuff. Very cool. Um, yeah. 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 Yeah.
And made possible thanks to you.
Very cool. All right. Yeah. Well, I think let's see. Maybe I've got a couple things I wanted to talk about too, so maybe I'll switch here.
Yep, that's enough from me.
Let's see. Okay. All right. So can you can see my screen on your other device, I'm hoping.
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things I wanted to kind of dig into. Oh wait, I need to switch so that I can actually see my trading view. Okay. Um, got it. Okay. So I wanted to look at Bitcoin on the monthly because it's like, whenever in doubt, zoom out kind of thing. Um, and I kept looking at all the weekly and the daily price action that's been happening lately, and it was freaking everybody out. And I was just trying to get a better sense of what do I think is actually going to play out over the rest of the year, basically. And so, zoom out to the monthly. Interesting to see. Looking at this, so this green line here is the 10 bar moving average, or a 10-month moving average in this case. And it actually came down and perfectly wicked down and bounced right off of it and has since bounced back up. And I think if you go back and look at sort of how has it been interacting with this same moving average, since the previous cycle. In the last cycle, it blew way above it, but it also blew way above the 20-month moving average too, whereas right now in this early stage, it didn't. It barely even got to the 20-month, and it's almost like the 20-month is acting as resistance. But the 10 is as of this minute anyway, until proven otherwise, is acting as support. So I'm really curious to see if that holds. Clearly, in the last cycle, it didn't hold, but you could argue that that was because it probably got a little bit overextended too far too soon early in the cycle anyway, and needed to sort of mean revert back to the center of the bands, which makes total sense. And then, of course, we had COVID that sort of threw a wrench in all that. So that, but then you could beg the question, is this really just a mean reversion here to the middle, back up to the middle, and are we going to bounce back down? I don't know. I get the sense that I think we could roll over, but until we do, I think it's interesting to see this 10-month moving average holding as some level of support. Now, if we go back to the weekly, I'm still kind of sitting on these levels. Basically, this one was derived from this low here, the candle bodies of this low here, and that still is continuing to hold a support as we speak. And it may very well. Although I feel like the longer we go, if we go through this week and into next week, and we still haven't had any kind of significant bounce, basically the longer we go sideways, the more likely it is we go down. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how the coming days play out. Because really that's all we're doing at the moment is just sort of going sideways on the same support level that we've been sitting on ever since the dip. We did kind of zoom through it last night, which was a little sketchy, but then next thing you know, back this morning, back today, we're back up above it and holding along it, just going sideways like pretty much Bitcoin has done all year, is basically go sideways with a few bouts of volatility thrown into the mix. But yeah, I'm really like, I feel like if it is going to go back up, it's going to have to do it soon. Otherwise, I think it's going to go down. And to what degree, I don't know. But I did want to move on. I just kind of wanted to touch on that. But really what I've been focusing on this past few days is like more macro stuff. Oops, move this up. So like I kept looking at what's going on with all this stuff. Why is everything going down? Why are stocks going down? Why is Bitcoin going down? And I threw this chart up here of the Dixie sort of inverted, and it's kind of cool because you can sort of overlay it right on top of Bitcoin. Oops, come on. Oh, unlock over here. You can overlay these two, and the movement is, very much in line. And so I was like, okay, just trying to wrap my head around this. Anybody who's deep into macro, this is probably like no brainer. You know this in your sleep. But for me, I was just trying to parcel this out and figure out what's correlated to what. How is all this working? And with the Dixie going up, Bitcoin's going down, and so I was like, well, what's causing the Dixie to go up? What's driving all this money into the dollar? And so I dug into it more. And so this is the same chart. This is actually a Dixie candle chart here. But then I overlaid global liquidity and inverted it, and then overlaid like just, I picked the 10-year bond just, to pick some kind of yield. And of course, liquidity is going up, which is causing everybody to flock to, safety. Or liquidity is going down, rather. This chart is inverted, sorry. So liquidity is going down, which is putting everybody into things like bonds and into things like the dollar and things like that, because that's sort of the flight to safety. So that's causing the dollar to go up, which is causing, again, Bitcoin to go down. So what I'm looking for, obviously, is liquidity to reverse and start going down, and then everything else will follow accordingly.
Yeah, I think that for me the lesson there was the whole I think again, this was the chatter that was happening in the Discord. There was some price action happening, and everyone was kind of wondering what it was, and everyone was like looking at the news. Is it going to be a decision around grayscale? Is it bad news around and actually it was ended up being pretty fake news around ETF decisions being postponed? Is it because Elon Musk is selling a lot of Bitcoin or whatever? And then again, it's way later that someone pipes up, oh, look at look at the DXY. Oh, look at liquidity. It's like you're pricing Bitcoin in dollars, and we're wondering why Bitcoin is changing price compared to dollars, and yet no one was looking at what was happening in the dollar. So Bitcoin is going down. Look at the DXY. The dollar is strengthening. It's like, oh yeah, that's what's happening. And then you know, so basically it's just a bit of a lesson here of no need to overcomplicate things sometimes. If something is happening, look at the DXY, what's happening to the dollar. Look at liquidity, what's happening to liquidity. And if basically that can either tell you that's what's happening, that's what's going on, or if nothing is really happening there, then it's like, okay, now we need to look at the news and what's kind of happening, what is causing this.
Right.
So yeah, just look at the fundamental stuff first before then speculating on the news and narrative and all that kind of stuff, rather than the other way around.
Right. Exactly. And again, as you know, as Raoul kind of keeps hammering every time he opens his mouth, seemingly, it all boils down to liquidity anymore. You know,
Yep.
that's what drives the whole world. And so
yet it seems we still need it drilled into our heads a bit more.
No, I know, right? But I mean, it's funny. You look at this and it's plain as day. You know, it's just like, well, yeah. I mean, there it is, right there in front of you. So, and even here, like in this early stage, you know, liquidity kind of ran the bottom cycle, the ending of Bitcoin and its run up, and then they sort of peaked in a similar time, and liquidity's been going down ever since. And basically, you know, Bitcoin's been just doing nothing. It's just been very, very meh. So that's kind of what everybody's sitting around waiting for. And in the meantime, you know, dollar go up, and you know, bond yields go up and all of that. So
yeah, and especially for so many crypto people who are invested on the whole basis of like crypto dollar go down, crypto go up. You need to be looking at the times when the dollar goes up as well, because it's not a one-way thing.
Right. Do I have, wait, is that what this, oh yeah. I had been following it the other way, like just, I think I had a, maybe that's a, no, I don't know. I got too many tabs, but
Yes,
I've been following this like not inverted, and then somebody in the group, in the Discord, was like, hey, here it is inverted. And actually, it's kind of cool because it, you know, it follows. I mean, you can see it's almost, sure, it's a little more exaggerated, but it's doing exactly the same stuff, you know, almost to a T. And so it's like, it's all right here in front of you, you know. You just have to sort of know where to look. So until this chart reverses, this chart ain't doing nothing but going down, you know. So, and until the liquidity chart reverses, this one isn't reversing. So it's just like it's all intertwined. Crypto is macro, as they say.
And speaking of the bleeding obvious, one thing that I have done since I've literally just got back home is I did catch up on your stream on Monday, and about so put up your Bitcoin chart with the EIP flags.
Yeah.
And I think you know where I'm going with this.
Let me. Oh yeah. Let me kind of clean this up so it's not quite so. Yes, I do. Well, here, are you talking about this 5 spot?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Totally.
So there was a 5 flag that popped up there, and what did you do?
I did nothing. I looked at that and was like, yeah, I don't know about that. That seems weird. And then
I
that
disagree. Because of?
Yeah, no, because of literally, it's never been wrong ever, going back in the entirety of this chart. I need to put it on the, actually, well, here, I think I have it on the index, or let me just throw it on here real quick.
Because what was it? Every time there's been a 4 or 5 signal, it's been 100% right so far on that candle, whatever. The 1 or 2s, they're like kind of more debatable, but not the 4 or 5s.
Right. Here we go. Let's see what it looks like on the full history. Look how it called these tops almost perfectly. on the monthly. Like, gotta love that. I mean, it was, well, typically, or one candle late on the first two. Anyway, let's look at this on the weekly. What do we got here? So going back all the way back to the beginning. Um, Pretty accurate. I'd say this one is a little iffy for sure. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, by and large, this one maybe you could argue is a little iffy, but I bet you there's probably at least a 10% swing in there. Well, no, that one probably too. This one, oh, here's one maybe that is way off. We got a we got a 7 sell spot here that you'd have been burned if you'd have unloaded right there, big time.
Okay, so basically one time it was wrong.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right, right. The one time. So then, go back to here. Oh, yeah, it's probably wrong. Yeah, no, definitely not. And it's, I think, worth pointing out, even when it's like only a little right, it's still like these are big moves. These are 10+% moves here.
Mm.
Um, and so depending on what your trading style is and your time horizon and all that, it's like, do you act on all these? Perhaps not. And of course, I think it's important to factor in where in the cycle, in the 4-year cycle you are when some of these kick off too. Certainly, I'd pay way more attention to something like this than perhaps I would something like this. Um, but you know, a fair bit of these, you could argue that trading these are a worthy endeavor. Also, I think it's important to note too, though, that you sure, like here you'll get a flag on the bull side, but it doesn't necessarily pop on the opposite end every single time. In fact, most of the time
Yeah.
it doesn't. So you
Hmm.
need to still employ other forms of technical analysis to really kind of play that fully. But certainly when they do flag, it's certainly worth considering as an entry point, whether to buy or sell.
Yep. And
And
one
then
thing that I hear from traders or whatever all the time is that you need a strategy that works 55-60% of the time, or whatever it is.
right,
Um, and yet here you have an indicator that is like seems to be correct, and even on different degrees. So like the higher the number, the more um the better chance that it is correct as well. And so yeah, not that you directly use it as a trading strategy in isolation,
right.
but using it is a pretty good idea. And yeah, I was basically watching through catching up on that stream you did on Monday, and I basically saved the timestamp down, and I'm going to send it to you. And I've basically titled it as a Scipio testimonial, because it was basically a way big I was wrong, the
Right.
indicator was right.
That's hilarious. Yes, do that. Um, that's funny. So yeah, I love this indicator has been so amazing actually. It's funny because I before I bought it, I was watching it, I was following, he has like a Telegram group and yeah, for I guess those of you who don't know who this it's Scipio or Scipio, I guess I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's a divergence flag indicator. It measures momentum divergences in momentum against price action, and I have a link to this indicator in the description of all my videos and my channel too, if you're interested in it. It's totally worth it. It is a paid indicator, but like it's like I don't know what I do without it anymore. It's funny, like it's become literally one of the best things that I've stumbled onto in a long time. And I don't add a lot of indicators to my sort of toolbox very often. I mean, it's maybe a few a year that I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. I see a use for that. And so this one has really cemented itself in my toolbox, and I put it on all my charts, and it works on it works on all the time frames, and it works on so many different kinds of pairs, and I like it because it doesn't need to factor in fundamentals. It's more just like factoring in, momentum swings and telling you when there's a swing in momentum that you can't necessarily see. I mean, yeah, you can go and dig up divergences. You can load all these momentum indicators and sit there and stare at a chart for a half an hour and try and identify these divergences. But sometimes it's kind of hard to do, and you have to kind of know what you're looking for and know what you're doing. And this just makes it so much simpler to identify them. And clearly there's something to that because clearly they are very good at signaling a likely reversal. Um, and
I do
so
have a I do have a question. So
yeah,
I think that you said that this indicator basically follows 12 or 13 different things.
yeah,
And when there's a divergence in one of them, it throws up a one. When it throws up a divergence in two of them, it throws up a two. Um,
correct.
are you able to, so, and in this case, it was like that, a five. So are you able to then look into that five flag or whatever and see which things which elements it is that are diverging, because then that could maybe even help you understand, yeah, you know that there's divergences somewhere, and that price action, when the price action does happen and stuff, it might be even more useful to know exactly what it is that is driving that price action, what those divergences are.
Right. Um, to the best of my knowledge, no, but I think that's a really good question. And that would be something cool that it could do, or maybe, well, I don't, unless
That'll be a
what's it?
question for Scipio, and
Yeah.
if that's not a feature yet, is that possible?
So here's what you can do in terms of alerts. Let's see. No, it doesn't really, it doesn't get that granular. Okay. In fact, it doesn't even get super granular in the sense of, only notify me when it's like a three or above. Um, though I don't know that you'd want that necessarily because I mean, you can, clearly you can get some major trend reversals with just a two or even a one. So sometimes I don't, it's like on certainly on a lower time frame, on like daily or intraday time frame, I'm gonna give less weight to like a one. But on a weekly or higher, a one is as good as anything, I think, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that has shown itself, looking at this chart in several instances. So
It's
um,
basically a combination of longer time frame and higher number on the flag, is basically indicating how the probabilities, the strength of that probability.
right, because like if you look at it on the daily, it gets pretty noisy. And
Yeah,
and
it's
if you
flags
tried to
all over the
trade that,
place.
you'd lose your ass basically.
Yeah.
And so here in these scenarios, you definitely want to like give more weight to higher numbers. But even it's interesting, even in that case, you've got fours and threes popping up here and like a seven here, and so
It's not doing much.
it doesn't do as much. Now it is worth pointing out that hold on, let me get rid of this for a sec. It's worth pointing out though that it generally does identify reversals like pretty good, on the daily, but it's a lot of noise. Like this is for somebody who's like a day trader who's trading a bunch of times a day, who trades actively, very actively all the time,
Yeah, smaller
Um,
percentage moves, like,
right,
little flag here, 1% move down, boom, that does me,
right,
something like that.
right. Um, and it is worth following on, I think, lower time frames too, because like here, I want to like if I want to see what's going on right now, it's I'll start, at the 1 hour and work my way out just to sort of see if you can start to see a pattern that unfolds in certain spots. Like if you see, a strong signal here, let's say for example, and then it's followed up on the 2 hour and you still are getting divergence flags in that same area. See, now it's a three here on the 2 hour. And so if you look at it on the 3 hour, let's see if it, now it's a seven with a buy. And so it's like suddenly this little spot right here has a lot more strength going on and is worth paying attention to than it might have otherwise been. And so I'll kind of, like I said, cycle through the time frames. Again, a stronger, now it's a buy with a six. So clearly this is a strong divergence signal right here that's unfolding. Um, but as you keep going further out, it does morph a little bit because it's factoring in longer durations and things like that. So, um, but I can look at this and go, okay, well, I know we had the one flag here, but it does look like maybe certainly on lower time frames, it's starting to form one here. So once it finally does pop up one on the daily here, then I'll be like, well, that's kind of confirmation here that maybe this is something that's worth paying attention to. So that's sort of another way you can use it to really kind of dig into it and make it more granular and have it sort of reinforce the signal, I guess, so to speak. So yeah, that's something I
So
do
I
as
think
well.
that I was only getting like very quick glances as you were scrolling through it and things, but maybe one thing to look at, and there might be nothing here, but there might be something there, is maybe take a look at a few of the different time frames and stuff and really zoom out, because I think sometimes I noticed that there were periods when there were not many flags happening and periods when there was like a lot of flags happening, like busy periods when it comes to divergences and not busy. And if there's anything interesting there, again, might be nothing, but might be worth looking into in the future.
Right.
And yeah, just had
Well, I wonder. So I guess let me kind of follow up on that real quick.
yep,
So like here, for example, in this stretch, like there was only two flags that we saw within, what was that, 3 months, a little more than 3 months. I feel like this is because the trend was so strong, and there
that was
wasn't a
not
lot of
much divergence
there wasn't a
happening.
lot of momentum changes happening. Like the momentum was just strong to the upside the whole time, and then strong to the downside the whole time. And then here, when it's more sideways, is when you're going to see more momentum shifts. I'm sure it would make sense that you see a lot more flags occur in periods of lower volatility. If I would, that would make sense. So um, yeah. Anyway, sorry, you were going to say.
No, I was just gonna say. So I got a notification, and on the Discord, someone has basically I put a whole thing of, oh, come on to the Twitch stream, come talk things with us, and actually on one of the replies, they're saying, look at the Bitcoin weekly chart. Apparently, it's literally like just broke the 200-week moving average downwards, and
Yeah.
apparently, according to them, they've only seen that twice since 2017.
Yeah, yeah. So yes. Well, here, actually, let me go back to the full history again. Uh,
Shout out to MK1 for that one.
okay, so this red line, the big red line, this guy here is that the two weekly. Yes. So yeah, no, historically, the 200 week has been the support, kind of going back to the beginning, and that was really a key thing. And even when it broke down in 2018, it landed almost perfectly. And really, it only kind of wicked through it during the COVID crash, and there was almost like a false break, I would even consider it. So this was really significant when this happened in this last bear cycle. A lot of people thought it was going to hold here, and well, it certainly did. And it would have made sense too, because it was near-ish to the previous all-time high, the previous cycle high, a little bit above it, but what did that look like going back? Oh, it was above it here. Oh, it was a fair bit above it. Okay, from the previous one. Yeah, no. So I was surprised. I was kind of disappointed actually too, because I was like, oh, geez, that's like, what is it, 12 plus years of history. And it was a pretty big divergence, and it lasted, a long time. I mean, it lasted from, well, here, let's see exactly how long.
And again, I know how to do that now because you told me how to do it last time.
So yeah, 39 months,
39
or
months.
or weeks rather. I'm sorry, weeks. 39
Well, I
weeks.
was about to say.
Yeah, no, 39 weeks. So yeah, the better part of a year, it was down there, and now it's basically, well, yeah, it broke down through. I mean, it sort of bounced off it here. I don't know, false break, sure. I mean, it barely closed above it or below it. Yeah, it had a week where it closed below it, but then it blew right past it again. It's riding this line. It's flirting with this line in a way that I don't like, for sure. And yes, it has kind of closed back through it. And I think too, it does need to get back above it. Like kind of like I've been saying, a minute ago too, if we don't see some upward price action sooner rather than later, I feel like there's more downside to come. And this moving average definitely plays a large role in that decision too, and that thought process. Um,
And that kind of leads me on to what I think will be my last question. So there have been there's potential ETF news coming up, but we don't know. We don't know if we are going to get decisions around it in the coming months or not. But during Bitcoin's life, there has been like kind of patterns emerge where. So I think it might have been you that said earlier on the Discord chat and things that September is usually not a good month for Bitcoin or
right.
whatever, and October tends to be a superb month for Bitcoin. And I think by now, when there's now a pattern and stuff, and people are watching these things, yeah, there's a bit of narrative drive in there. However, the other thing is that Bitcoin's life has basically been since 2008. And we're now understanding more and more that a lot of that is kind of being driven by liquidity, and that essentially this whole thing of, oh, Bitcoin has these particular bad months, Bitcoin has these particular good months. It'll be interesting to look back over that same time period and look at what happened in liquidity in those months. And is really Bitcoin's bad and good months just a reflection of liquidity's good and bad months? And actually, is it just essentially a reflection of the liquidity cycle? And if so, if we see basically it just means that we need to watch liquidity like a hawk even more if that is the case,
Right.
because then if the liquidity cycle is playing out differently and it's having a fantastic September, then it's like, okay, forget the historical narrative around Bitcoin and what happens in September. It's going to rip in this September because liquidity is ripping this September.
Well, let's look at a couple of them here real quick. So this, it's funny. This last September, it wasn't a terrible month. I mean, it was more of a sideways month, and liquidity was basically sideways.
Yeah, but
Um,
crypto people, it's not exciting, and therefore it's like it's a
right.
bad month compared to the ripped up that we want.
It is, yeah. So again, here's a perfect example of what we were just saying. Bad September, amazing October, right here. Um, but it wasn't a terrible September. And liquidity was just down a tick. And then let's go back one more. What do we got here? Again, bad, slightly bad September, mega pump October. um,
Yeah.
and then here, it's funny. Yeah, so bad September, okay October, but still green. It is funny how that works, though. I mean, going back all these years. Here was a bad October finally back in 2018, but that was in the depths of a bear cycle. I wonder, it was this? Yeah. What do you know? Too funny, and it's funny because most of these are ending on like 60-day cycles too. I bet if I pulled up my cycles chart, these would all align with like 60-day cycle corrections. In fact, I know they do. But yeah, here's a bad September, big mega October. So yeah, who knows?
I'll be cracking it. I'll between you, me, Raul, Major, everyone in the Discord or whatever, are we now reaching the point nearby where we're rubbing our hands going, oh yeah, it's all coming together?
Right, right. It's interesting if you look at this on the monthly with the liquidity, it's even more sort of, pronounced and in line with exactly what's going on. It's so funny. Um, that did make me think of, oh, so interesting. This popped up just while we were talking here. What is price doing? Suddenly price is pumping. We're up, a whole 1.3%. But we've got this, decent looking green candle, and suddenly we have a bear's damaged flag that's also part of that same indicator suite. So maybe this is the start of something we're seeing right now. Is it the start of this? I don't know, but
find out next episode.
Right.
Go with Chris.
I mean, I do think it's going to have to do something like this, and then yeah, like I talked about in my last episode, where's it going to settle? But I think we see something come out of here. That's still my base case. So Anyway, probably a good note to end on. We've been rambling here for a bit.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, very good. Very good. Thank you for coming on, and thank everybody for watching that watched. If you're still around, and and yeah, we'll have to do this again one of these days.
Thank you for having me back.
All right, very good, everybody. I will be back on Friday with probably just a quick price update. We'll see where prices go from here and see what things look like going into the weekend. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week. All right, thank you.